Hey there, it's Lenny McGill with the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop right here in the amazing Nashville studios. And today we're going to dive into the new Gen 6. It's out, it's here, and there are three models available at this time. There's the Glock 19, there's a Glock 45, and a Glock 17. Three different models that are available currently, and I assume they'll be doing more. And they all are really unique and really special in some ways. And you know what? I'm impressed with some of the things they've done, to be quite honest. First of all, cosmetically looking at it, they certainly have changed the texturing, and something that a lot of people always talked about that wasn't good enough texture. And so they've done two really important things, I think. One, they've improved the actual feel of the texture and the grip of the texture. It's kind of an RTF, but not quite as aggressive in a sense that the RTF had points that a lot of law enforcement officers really rejected because it just messed up their uniform. They're wearing a polyester shirt and they've got this pointed frame that was actually, tearing up their uniform, so that wasn't a good thing. So they discontinued that, but they came back to a modified version of that, and they actually, what you'll see here, based upon this is a Gen 5, this is a Gen 6, you're going to see the difference is they brought the texturing all the way up, and a lot of people like that versus having a smooth finger or thumb swell there for you. We do that, frequently on a lot of custom work. People want that texture all the way up. Personally, I'm not a big fan of it. I actually, like the original smooth side because I just feel that, this is going to just tear my thumb up a little bit. But a lot of people, like I said, like that texture. So, Glock, I think, has been, paying attention to the marketplace and decided that they would increase the texture all the way up. The other thing that is, kind of very noticeable and very demonstratable in your hand, as you grab hold of it, it feels different. And it feels different because what they've done is they've done a little palm swell. And in turn, what they did is they actually reduced the overall width from the back to the front. And they increased it with the palm swell. Now, what's really interesting is that, I was holding it and I thought, it really feels different and it feels bigger, but it's not bigger. Okay, and I actually had to demonstrate that to myself. So I took a measuring tape and I went ahead and I actually measured around here, and I'll just do it for you real quick because I was kind of shocked. I thought, well, geez, the Gen 6 is going to be bigger. So it's basically 5.5 inches. So then I took a Gen 5 and I did the same exact thing. And I like I said, I was kind of shocked because it's the same measurement. So what they did is they really didn't increase the overall circumference. They just replaced some of the plastic. So they made the channel in the back there, which is used for your plugs and all that other stuff. They made that a little smaller. Okay, so the overall size of the grip from the back strap to the front strap is a little shorter, but then they increased the size right here. Now, what that does is it puts your finger a little farther up. And some people really like it. If you have small hands, hey, it feels good. And some people don't if you have large hands because it doesn't feel good. So then what we're seeing is a lot of people, a lot of our competition shooters who finally got a Gen 6 in their hands and they're saying, well, I like everything, but I'm going to use the back straps. I never used the back straps before, but I'm going to use the back straps that come with it. And it comes with, all the guns come with two different back straps. There's a medium and a large. And on the back, it actually says M and L. And so the back straps are the same feature that was on the Gen 5s in a sense that they just go on the backs like so. You kind of click in the bottom and then you use the longer pin to capture it in there. And so then that actually starts to make it feel like a little bigger back there as the original Glock was as far as the length from back strap to front strap. And then the palm swell, starts to feel maybe even a little bit better. So some of our shooters really like that. And again, it really depends on your hand size and depends on what you're used to. The original Gen 5, I feel is just, one of the, just feels really good in my hand. But the Gen 6, they're trying to accommodate and give everybody the option. And a lot of people really like just the standard grip. And like I said, a lot of our competition shooters who are starting to experiment with this really want to use the back strap. The other thing you're going to notice here very quickly is that they've increased the beaver tail concept. So here on the Gen 5, there's really no beaver tail, okay? And then here on the Gen 6, they just brought that right out. One of the things they did that I think is kind of goofy is they made that backstrap tilt down just a little bit, okay? So, I think it could have come out straighter and it would allow your hand to get up a little bit higher. But I will say that you can push yourself up as high as possible and you're not going to get any snake bite from that slide. I mean, I'm trying really to get as much meat on there as possible and I just can't get that slide to bite me, which is actually a good thing. So I'm sure they've experimented with that a lot and they felt that that was the best angle. And some people, are saying, well, it doesn't allow me to get up as high as I like to. There's some people who walk around and say, if you don't have, snake bites on your thumb and forefinger right there, you're not really shooting the Glock well because you want to get up as high as possible. And the higher you get, again, the more you're going to control recoil. So that beaver tail is a nice addition. Now, some people have already asked us to kind of reduce that a little bit and make it a little bit more straight so that we're not necessarily, like I said, being pushed down by that beaver tail, that backstrap there. Another thing they did, which is really smart, and something we did on our M1X frame, is the ledge, okay? They have a kind of a gas pedal built into this particular frame, and they actually textured it as well, right there. So it's actually pretty cool. And it gives you the ability to get up there with your thumb and actually have something to rest on. And two things that really are important for me. One, in the fact that it tells you where your thumb should be. Okay, a lot of people, they don't know what to do with that thumb. It really should be right there on the frame. The more meat you can put on the gun, the more control you have of the gun, and that's where your thumb should rest. Okay, a lot of times, people don't know what to do with that extra thumb there. They're like, okay, where do I put it? Well, there's where you put it, and that's by design, okay? So they gave you a ledge there for that, and they textured that ledge, which again, to me, I wouldn't have textured it, but hey, Glock knows what they're doing, and so I'm gonna go with it, but it does give you that something to hold on to. Now, also what I found is they literally have been paying attention to customers because everybody hates the original takedown lever or slide lock because it's so small. And of course, we've been selling and manufacturing an extended version, a precision extended version that's not stamped, it's machined, that allows you to get a better grip on that takedown lever, also known as the slide lock, not to be confused with the slide stop. Okay, so the slide lock is the takedown lever. What they did here, they didn't increase the slide lock. They actually scalloped out the frame a little bit so you can get a little better purchase on that, which makes a whole big difference. I mean, really, it's huge. So when you go to take the gun down, you don't have to sit there with your fingertips and all that. Again, it's a stamped part. We have a precision part that's machined, that's a little flatter, that gives you a little bit of better lockup, a little thicker too. But bottom line is that was a nice addition that they did. Okay, so we did that. And then the other thing you'll notice here, which is kind of subtle until you really look at it and you go, oh, I see. The front serrations, they made them so that they're deeper at the top and they're a little shallower as it goes down towards the bottom of the slide. Now that's really interesting, and I think it makes a lot of sense because a lot of people like to manipulate their slide from the front. So when you actually go to load or check, you can grab it right there in those serrations and double check into it like so. So you can also come from below and do that as well. So the key is to keep your fingers away from that muzzle, but to get up there and to look, and it gives you a better look than coming from the rear, which you can do as well. But they did those serrations, and I think that's a nice little touch. One thing we can look at now, we'll look at some of the parts. Obviously, the trigger is different. Okay, it's a flat trigger with a little hook on the bottom compared to the standard triggers of years past. Okay, so there's the Gen 3 trigger right there, Gen 4 trigger, and here's the new Gen 6 version. And you notice it has, like I said, a little flat spot. Has the safe action trigger again, of course. It feels good. It actually does. We tested it out already. It's about 5.5 pounds right there. But what I've noticed, it is a little shorter than the original trigger, shorter in pull. So it really engages just a little bit shorter right there. And the reset is not bad. And I'll show you later that, all the aftermarket triggers will work in here. So that's pretty cool too. So now the other thing that they did, which is really smart, again, because we've made a living selling extended controls, is they extended the magazine release button. And it's available with all their guns right now. Let's see here. Here's the Gen 5. And here is the new Gen 6. And you can kind of see the extension right there. So it's a little bit forward out, rounded off on the front there. And, just gives you that ability to manipulate that button without adjusting your grip. And that's the key, is that you want to be able to do all the controls without adjusting your grip. Another thing they did is they have a ledge right around this slide stop lever, okay? And that is designed to help prevent you from accidentally putting that on as you get that high grip and you get yourself up on top there. A lot of times people are shooting and the vibration of the gun in their hands, sometimes they'll pop that slide stop up and it will lock the slide back unintentionally while they're shooting. And they go, what happened? Oh, is something wrong? Oh, no. Well, basically it's, just user operator error in the sense that they're just the vibration and the way they're holding the gun. And guys that got big hands, sometimes they just will depress that button up as the gun's shooting, and all of a sudden it locks back and you didn't really want it to lock back. This new little ledge here actually helped prevent some of that, supposedly. And it should. We've also tested the extended slide stops, and they work fine. So everything looks good on that side. All right, so there's some of the external differences on this Gen 6. Overall, I think it's pretty cool, okay? A lot of people love it. We put it in people's hands. Some people say, oh, this is great. Other people go, oh, no, I like the other one better. But so I'd say, 90% of people are kind of happy with the Gen 6 at this point. We are, like I said, exploring a lot of different options on different things we can do, different parts we can build. And there's some cross-compatibility with some things we already have. Like I said, our pyramid trigger, will fit and function right into this gun. The 3.5-pound connectors are going to fit and function in this gun as well. We'll talk about that when we break it apart a little bit coming up here. But right now, one of the other big things we should talk about is the new Optic Ready System. The ORS is what they call it. Used to be an MOS, Modular Optic System. Now it's ORS, Optic Ready System, and they have redesigned this entirely. That cover plate on the Gen 6 does not fit on the Gen 5, vice versa, so it's a totally different system. So let's go ahead and take it apart, and I'll actually show you a couple things about the plates that they come with it. So I've got a little tool here, and I'm going to just get in here, and I would always encourage you to make sure you have the right bit because you don't want to strip those screws out. All right, what you're going to see here is that this new ORS, they call it, Optic Ready System, is completely different from the original MOS, Modular Optic System. And it has a unique mounting system that allows you to mount a variety of different optics. And it comes with 3 different plates, and they're plastic. Of course, Glock is in the plastics business. So these plates are interesting in the sense that they have a little, kind of a little lip here that's going to attach underneath a little metal lip there. And then it just sits in there and it gets screwed down with the optic screws into the holes. So there are 3 different plates. There's an 02, an 03, and an 04. And let's look at the 04 real quick, which would be for your Hellisen 507K, Hellisen 507, or Hellisen 407K, the EPS carry, all the K footprints. If you notice on this this plate, they have like a little slot there that's going to go underneath a lip, and it's going to capture itself and sit right in there like so. Has a little bit of motion to it, so it's not quite as tight a fit. And then what happens when you take an optic, and whether it's a 407K or the 507K or any of the K footprints, they all basically are the same size. When you put it on here and you actually, lock it onto these little plastic bosses, there's a lot of room. There we go, right there like that. There's a lot of room on the front and back. Boom, boom. So there's really, not a lot of support. And it doesn't look that great, to be quite honest. And it's the same concept with the RMR and the 507C options, all the C-plate options. So what we have done here at the GlockStore is we are making a series of plates for this ORS that are out of metal, and we have basically also put up a little fencing on either side to give it added support. The concept being is that it looks better because it kind of completes the gun, and then it also gives you better, I guess what I'd say is a little bit more strength because it's metal versus plastic, and the gate itself really kind of holds that optic in place as well. And you'll see it does look a little better. This is a little prototype that we've got going on. We're starting to machine these just now, and you can see how it finishes out the edges, both in the rear and the front. And it just looks better. And I think metal's better than plastic personally. Now, again, that crush washer concept, it's kind of a nice party line, right? But again, Glock's in the plastic business, and they're going to sell you the plastic. We feel that the upgraded plate will be the aluminum plate. We've got them for a variety of different optics, and one that's really, we're really proud of it here is this A plate, or basically acro plate, that Glock does not make. So we've got an option that will allow you to install an acro. So pretty cool. That's a lot of the exterior things that we can talk about, and now I think I want to go ahead and tear this apart for you, and go ahead through the same disassembly, reassembly process. Make sure I'm giving you the full rundown, because there's something really unique here. And one of the things we can talk about right now is the fact that the EDP, the extractor, depressor, plunger assembly, is totally different than what it was on the Gen 5, Gen 3, Gen 4, which was really the same for many, many years. And they did it because of the optic. Many people, when they're installing an optic, were putting the wrong screws into the optic screw hole. And that screw was intersecting with the EDP rod, okay, the actual rod itself, the steel rod. And so it would actually touch the rod, that would then prevent the extractor from having motion. And then the gun would malfunction. It just wouldn't cycle because it wasn't able to go down there and actually grab hold of the spent cartridge on a regular or reliable basis, because it didn't have any motion to it, because that screw was preventing it from allowing the spring in that EDP assembly to work with the extractor. So I'm going to show you that here, but it's really different. And so the takedown process is a little bit different as far as once you take off the slide cover plate. But it's a little bit easier in some ways, and then it's also a little bit more difficult. But I'll show you the trick on how to take it apart. So here is a Glock 19 Gen 6. We're going to go ahead and disassemble this thing. Of course, it is empty. There's no ammunition here on the table, no ammunition in my magazines. I'm ready to go ahead and take it apart. I'm going to pull down the slide lock, which is much easier, and hold it down and just walk the slide straight off, just like that. Boom. Okay. So we have a frame and we have an upper. I'm going to do the upper second. I'm going to do the frame first here. So let's go ahead and take a look at it real quick. Everything is really interesting here in that the trigger bar has the same exact stock number as the Gen 5 trigger bar. So in my mind, they're interchangeable because it's the same part. The shoe itself is different, but the bar is exactly the same. Okay? So I can see the part number right here on the top. You may not be able to read it, but it is the same as the Gen 5. So to disassemble, the first objective is to take out the trigger pin and the trigger housing pin. So we have to use a punch, and it's recommended you have a 3/32 inch punch, okay? So to do so, what we want to do, the trick to taking that trigger pin out, is to manipulate the slide stop at the same time you're putting pressure on that trigger pin. And the first or second time, it is very difficult, but as you take it apart, it gets a little bit easier. So I'm going to put my pin on top of this, right, and my punch on top of the pin, And I'm going to go ahead and get my fingers on that slide stop lever, and I'm going to go ahead and just lean onto it and give a little bit of pressure. Now, if you're really strong, you'll probably do it out here, but I've always found that little body weight just helps you get that thing out. And there's the pin right there. Okay, this trigger pin appears to me to be interchangeable with the Gen 5s. Okay, so, basically the same pin. Same thing here with this trigger housing pin. It's a plastic part, so you can typically do this with your hands, just like so. Boom. All right, so there's our 2 pins. And I'll stick them out here so you can actually take a peek at them. And they're basically identical to the Gen 5. Next thing to do is to take out the locking block. And from what I've seen, the locking block is basically the same as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take my punch and just pry it out, just like so. I then grab hold of it, and there's your locking block. It has the same stock number as the Gen 5 locking block. Boom. All right, now, next up is the slide stop, and it's ambidextrous, okay, and it kind of just picks up like so. This is the standard slide stop. There is an extended version that has a little bit more extension right here to give you the ability to get a hold of that without altering your grip. All right, and that's actually one of the really nice things about the extended version is you can actually, manipulate it both on and on when you can flick it up, and you can also flick it down without taking your grip around. So that's really nice. Trigger housing and the trigger bar assembly come out like so. Okay, and it incorporates the same stirrup system that the Gen 5 does. And if you look at this, you're going to see that there is a little bit of spring pressure, just like the regular one. So to take this out, we're going to pull it forward and twist it, just like that. And it comes out. And if you can get in really close here, you'll see that the trigger has a number right there, and that number is the same as a Gen 5. Okay, so that said, that's the same piece. The trigger shoe is different, and it can be removed by driving that punch out and going ahead and just taking it right off the bar, and you can actually put another trigger shoe on. So that's something to be aware of, and the fact is that the bar is the same, so everything's going to work the same. So I'm going to put it out there as well. What is different is the shape of this trigger housing, and it is a different product number versus the Gen 5, which I thought I had out here. Here it is right here. All right, they look a lot alike, to be quite honest, but there are some subtle differences. And there's some differences on the frame that will not allow them to be interchangeable. So there's a Gen 6 trigger housing, and there's a Gen 5 trigger housing, and they are separate, and they are not the same. However, well, good news in my mind is the fact that the connector is the same in basically all the guns, all the way down from a Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 6. It's the same connector, which is good news because we have a 3.5-pound connector, which we've been selling for 30 years, that significantly reduces the trigger weight as well as the trigger pull itself. So it's actually a pretty nice feature that you can actually upgrade your Glock that's inexpensive. Now, let me take my punch, and I will remove the connector. 3/32 inch punch. There's a hole back here. You can kind of see the other leg of the connector sitting there. And all you do is kind of use my armorer's duct tape here, kind of get a spot where I can get to press that down, and it just comes straight out just like that. And there's the connector. And like I said, that's the same exact part that's been used by Glock for 35, 40 years. Pretty amazing. Inside of the trigger housing, it's the same mechanism as the Gen 5. Okay, there's a stirrup right here. You can kind of see that where the trigger bar rests into the front, the leading edge of the cruciform rests into, and there's a kind of a guide rod and a spring that are captured in here. It's really a unique system in the sense that it's really captured just by this piece right here. There's no need to take it apart because when you buy a trigger housing, it comes assembled, okay? Now, the other thing too is to look at the magazine button because some people may want to change their magazine buttons out, which is not a bad idea. If you look inside there, that V captures a roll pin. It's kind of a spring. It's just a roll pin, basically. And it captures the magazine release button and gives it its spring action. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to take it apart. It's kind of difficult to actually get a camera in there. But basically, the concept is I'm going to use this special little tool that really makes a big difference. You can use a flathead screwdriver as well. Here's how it works. Go in here like so. Got to make sure I hold the magazine button down. Okay, here we go. All right, there. That was easy. See, this tool makes it so much easier. Here's what it looks like now. Well, see, the pin now is stuck above the actual mag button. I'll take a pair of needle nose pliers. I'm going to go in there and grab hold of that pin, and it's just press fit. And I'm going to pull it straight out here. There we go. Okay, there's the pin, or roll spring that gives it its spring pressure, and it's basically captured in the frame in that V, and it just springs back and forth like so. So, now that we have that out, the actual magazine button is going to just come straight out. Now, this magazine button is reversible, so if you wanted to be lefty and you wanted to operate it with your left hand, you just switch it around. And that's one of the nice things they did on the Gen 4s, Gen 5s, and now here it is on the Gen 6. Makes a lot of sense. So, there's the pin. And there's the mag button. And I'm going to go ahead now and just take a look at this frame. And I will say that the Gen 6 frame is different than the Gen 5, with some differences back here that do not make it compatible. Okay, so that's really what's really different about this. You cannot put a Gen 5 slide on top of this. However, we have experimented, and you can put the V slides on top of the Gen 6 frames. So I don't know how long the V's are going to be around, but the V slides do actually fit on top of here, and they actually do work. The other thing to think about too is this slide lock. Okay, it's spring action. It's the same function as a Gen 6, a Gen 5. To take it out, basically what we're going to do is we're going to depress it and tilt it up, and then push it through. Okay, so I've got to get it like so it's going to fit through that hole on the other side. And the way you do that is take your punch and actually start to push it down through that hole, just like that. And there it is sticking out right now. Here's what's really important. There's a spring underneath there. I'm going to keep my finger on top of that, so when I pull it all the way out, that spring doesn't go flying away. Boom. And there's the slide lock. And here's that little spring we were talking about. And it's tiny. And we sell a bunch of these springs because people lose them all the time. So that's your spring to the slide lock. All right, and there's the frame completely disassembled. And like I said, it's very similar in many ways to the Gen 5 as far as some of the mechanisms that work, but slight tweaks on some of the pieces and parts to make it, I guess, compatible with what they were trying to do with that slide, that V slide, and all that other stuff. So there's a stripped frame for a Gen 6. Like I said, the mag wells are different. We are working on a mag well for that, but this is, this is pretty simple and very similar to the Gen 5. Nothing really different as far as disassembly, reassembly. The reassembly is fairly simple, and we'll go through it real quick. I'm going to go ahead and start right here backwards and go with the slide lock. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get your spring positioned, and there's a little spot for it. It's got a little round, little place for it. The way you do this, okay, again, remember the part number faces towards you. The slot faces towards you. The smooth side faces away towards the target. So we've got the spring in place. I've kind of started this guy, this being the slide lock, across. And now I'm going to take my punch, and I've got a thinner punch this time. I'm going to bring it in here and actually pull that spring down all the way and get that started. And then, look at that, captured it, and voila. Pretty good trick, and it works. Voila. Next up is going to be the magazine release button and the spring. Okay, so now, one of the ways to do this is, there's really only one good way to do it, and it's going to be that you want to get your magazine button positioned Okay, and then I'm right-handed, so I'm going to have it on the right side. If you're left-handed, just push it over so that the serrated side is on your the right side, so you can operate it with your left hand. But I'm going to put it on the left side because I'm right-handed. Okay, so once we get it in place, then I can put my spring in. Okay, so I can grab the spring with the pliers, and all we're doing is putting the spring into the V and pushing it down. Okay, got it started. So now I'm going to take the front of these guys and just push that straight down all the way. And it should be seated when it's approximately halfway up the actual magazine button itself. So I've got it all the way seated into that V, and now I'm going to take my little tool and I'm going to push it over to that slot, and it's going to fall down into the slot, and it will give me the spring pressure I desire. Boom. Gotta love that. Looks good, feels good. Okay, easy stuff. Okay, so now there's the two of the, basically hardest parts of the frame. But let's go ahead and start to reassemble our trigger and trigger bar. So here's the connector. Okay, I'm gonna pop it in like so. Okay, the connector should stick out just a little bit like it is right now. A lot of people think, oh, it's bent, I gotta bend it back in so it sits there. No, you want that spring action. Okay, so it should sit out just a little bit from the frame. Once you lock it and press it all the way in there, it's gonna have just a little gap there, and that's the action that actually resets the trigger right here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, you notice that the trigger bar kind of travels across here like so. So here's what's really going on. This is what drives the trigger down. So as you pull the trigger, it gets driven down by that ramp right there, that angle, and that's what actually releases the striker, because the back end of the cruciform, which is what this is called, the back end of the cruciform, let's see if I can hold it steady, actually grabs hold of the striker, and as you pull the trigger, it pulls it back, and then it gets driven down by that part, and boom, striker goes forward and the gun goes bang. Now, to put the leading edge of this cruciform in, we got to capture that stirrup there with that leading edge there. And so it's sometimes very easy, and you can get in there and just kind of get it. And this time it was easy, just like that. If you have any difficulty, just take a punch and lift that, that stirrup up a little bit so it sits a little bit more proud. And that's how it's supposed to look, like that. Just like that. Okay. All right, now, next up, we go ahead and drop this trigger straight in, okay? So trigger kind of first, okay, to kind of get it to sit there, and then here comes the trigger housing. Okay, looks good. I can look inside the hole, and yes, okay, the trigger pin hole is lined up with the hole in the trigger, which is good. The next one is the actual slide stop, and it goes right over around the trigger itself, and it sits straight in. You see that hole lines up too. And again, I want to look inside there and say, okay, well, yeah, the holes are basically lined up. That's good. So now we're in good shape. Now, locking block comes next. Okay, so we put the locking block in, and there's, again, the holes. So we're going to line up with the other holes. And so we're going to push it straight down over top of that. And I can look inside there and okay, well, it's not quite lined up, but sometimes that trigger just needs to be pushed down a little bit, okay? And the slide stop itself sometimes needs to be pushed down, but I can see, okay, there's where it's supposed to rest. Take my finger and I can see there's a little pressure there, so okay, I get it. I can see there's a good hole there for the pin to go into. And we'll talk about that as soon as we get our pin lined up. But first I want to put in the trigger housing pin before I do anything else, because I want to make sure that the trigger housing pin itself locks the housing in place before I go too much further, because I don't want it to be bouncing around when I try to put that other pin in there. And I'll take my punch out of my little punch set here, my hammer, should I say, with the nylon tip. I really like this hammer because of that nylon tip. It allows me to just kind of beat on these things and not really worry about marring up the surface. And this pin fits perfectly there. I'll take a punch and just kind of center it up on both sides. And it looks good on both sides. It's not going to interfere with my grip. And so I'm feeling good about that. Now, little trick with this trigger pin. Sometimes people have trouble getting it in. And so what I've been playing with for many years is, okay, so you, like I said, you have to take your finger and kind of push down and look inside there and say, okay, I've got a good hole there. And sometimes, you say to yourself, okay, well now I'm going to go ahead and put the pin in, and your finger moves. So what I like to do is kind of get it lined up, come around here, get the pin started, okay, and then I'll put it on the table and just kind of push it in there. Now, if I have any resistance, something's not right, okay? So whether it be the trigger, or whether it be the slide stop itself, if it starts to get resistance, I don't want to beat it in there because, well, honestly, I have been known, to take a hammer to this thing, and what happens is I'm just bending the slide stop lever in there. So be careful, because you want to make sure the pins line up. So again, I got everything lined up, looks good, and that feels a little better. I have a little bit of resistance there. Let's see, can I get this thing in? No, too much. There you go. There you go. Okay, so that's basically seated. However, if you look on the one side, you'll see there's a little bit of space, and over here it's kind of flush. Well, what we want to do is we want that to be centered up so that the slide stop itself actually nestles into the little ridges that are on that trigger pin. So I can take a punch, and usually you may hear a click when this actually seats itself. And I heard it click. I hope you did too, because now the pin is in the proper place and the slide stop is resting right where it wants to be. And that's the motion you want. It's not a lot. It's very subtle, but it does have a nice spring pressure down. And that's basically the disassembly, reassembly of the new Gen 6. Very similar to the Gen 5. And, easy. So let's move on to the slide real quick here. Okay, we're ready to start on the Gen 6 slide, the upper. And of course, it has plastic sights. So they're same system as the Gen 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all the same. You can tap those out. There's a front sight tool that allows you to remove the front sight. You can add your aftermarket sights, which many people do, and I suggest you do because they're much better than the factory plastic. And of course, everybody wants to go to night sights anyways. Like I said earlier, and I don't know if I actually said it, but the guide rod is the exact same as a Gen 3, which for us is fantastic because we offer our tungsten guide rods, which make a huge difference in the way the gun shoots and the way the gun feels. This is our pure tungsten guide rod, and this is the factory plastic guide rod. I'm going to tell you right now, this is probably the best upgrade you can make on this Glock, on any Glock, because it really helps reduce recoil and muzzle flip, and it's just one of the most popular things we sell. What's really interesting, though, is that all three of these new guns, the 45, the 17, Gen 6, and the Glock 19, all use the same guide rod, the Glock 19 Gen 3 guide rod. So if you have a 19 Gen 3 guide rod, whether it be tungsten or plastic, it'll fit into your Gen 6. Now, so there's the guide rod. That's easy out. I think everybody knows that. This is the barrel, and what's really interesting about the barrel is it is different. And we don't know why, but they did make it different than the Gen 5 barrel, and I'm going to show you the difference real quick. It's very subtle. But I will say, to be honest, and we shot a Gen 5 barrel in the Gen 6 and didn't have any trouble. However, Glock made a change, and they did it for a reason. And I think the reason is that the way they set that trigger back, that there's maybe some intersection of the bird's eye on the trigger bar with the actual barrel. So they made a little notch right here on the Gen 6 barrel. And let's see if we can actually show that to you right there. It's right here on the bottom. And it does not appear on the Gen 5 barrels. So that's really interesting. So we'll have Gen 6 barrels soon, but again, in a pinch, the Gen 5 barrel does appear to fit and function in the Gen 6. Now, Glock may say it doesn't, but, well, we shot it and we didn't have any trouble. Gun didn't blow up. Everything seems to be fine. But again, they did that for a reason, and that's something that we noticed. So there's the barrel. There's the guide rod. Okay, everything else is basically in here. We have our, go ahead and identify the parts for you. This, of course, is a striker, right? And the slide cover plate, which is different. It's the same as the V models, but it's not the same as a Gen 3, 4, or 5. So we've got those coming out too. These are very popular for us. We do a lot of different engraved designs, a lot of custom engraving for people, but also a lot of different engraved designs. And we will have Gen 6 available soon. This is the safety plunger, okay? It's basically the same as the Gen 5. The EDP is totally different, and I'm going to show you that right now. So let's go ahead and do the disassembly of this slide. Okay, because basically right now we're field stripped. You can clean it, do everything you need to do, and this is really all you need to do for just general maintenance and cleaning. But let's get a little deeper in here because I want to show you this new EDP assembly that is different, radically different than the originals. So to remove the slide cover plate, I'm going to go ahead and pop the striker in the unfired position, push it back a little bit, okay? All right, now, everybody knows, but I'm going to just review again, the safety plunger prevents the striker from going forward unless it's depressed. So if I depress the safety plunger, the striker typically will fall forward. There, it just fell forward. And you can see that there's the actual striker nub, the striker tip is sticking out of the breech face right there. So we pull it out of the way, right? Okay. Because what I want to do is I want to take my punch and get underneath, and that is called the spacer sleeve, and it's spring loaded, and it actually has a spring that's pressing up on the slide cover plate and capturing it in the position it's at. So to remove that, what I got to do is I got to get in here and I have to push down on that spring pressure, just like so. Okay, so I hold it down and then just thumb this straight off, and I keep my finger on there. But what you're going to notice is that there is no EDP right here, as in there is in the Gen 3, 4, and 5. So I go ahead and pull out the striker, and here's the striker assembly. Okay, spacer sleeve, striker or firing pin spring, spring cups, and the actual firing pin itself. Now, the firing pin itself is different in size than the Gen 5. The firing pin lug is narrower, okay? The tip is the same, but they're not interchangeable. So that's very important to keep that in mind. All right, and I'll take that apart in just a minute. But here, let's go ahead and attack this EDP. Okay, now, when I first got this gun, I wasn't really aware of how it worked, and I kept thinking, well, how do you take this thing apart? What's going on here? I can see a couple things. One, I can see that there's a little piece of steel right there that's intersecting with the extractor, okay? Now, everybody knows or should know that the extractor has a little spring action. So it allows it to go down and actually ratchet up and then close back over top of the casing, and that's what extracts the casing. So if you take a little punch in here, you can actually see that the extractor moves ever so slightly. And that's the action you want. So when you put this back together, you're going to want to see that kind of action. And Glock came up with this really unique system, which is, well, you know, it's interesting. I don't know if it's great, but it's interesting because, like I said, they wanted to get rid of that rod that ran all the way up here that interfered with screw holes for the optics. So here's how it works. You take your punch, and it's got to be like a 3/32 inch punch exactly. And you put it into the hole. All right, now you press down on it really hard, and you'll hear it pop. You're supposed to hear it pop. Just like that. Oops, and there come my parts. Okay, so what you notice is it actually has captured itself in there. And the safety plunger and the extractor just came right out once I took the pressure off of the extractor itself. And the pressure is from that spring that lives in here. So watch this now. So now I've got the punch is basically stuck in. I'll just pull the punch out. And I'm just going to now just kind of bring this thing forward. And it's going to come out by itself. It's going to be right here. And this is the new extractor depressor plunger assembly. Okay. And it comes out like that. All right, I'm going to put it out here so you can actually see it. So if you notice what's happening here, there's like a little ramp there. And so what we're doing is we're forcing that pin onto that ramp, which then pushes this entire mechanism back. And the pin lives there like so. Okay, and that's what it get kind of stuck in there like that. So it's really weird because I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, how many times am I going to punch that before it fails? Before I ruin that piece right there? And I don't know. I mean, it's a hardened piece of steel. This is a hardened piece of steel, but I just wonder, I mean, I'm relying upon that pressure right there to actually jam it in there and pull that piece of steel back off of the extractor itself. So that's basically what's happening there. And so that's how this thing lives in there. I think it kind of lives like this. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing in your when it's assembled, you're seeing that little piece of steel right there intersecting with that. That's the new EDP concept, and I believe they're probably going to sell this as an assembly. But now, I believe we have disassembled this completely. Again, if you wanted to change out your sights, you need to have a front sight tool to get in there and actually access that flat hexagonal screw. There's really no other way to do it except if you have a front sight tool. And we, of course, offer those, a variety of different options for that. But once you get on there, you're going to basically unscrew that, pop that out. You can drift that out with a punch and put in new sights. But there's the complete disassembly, reassembly. Well, we're about to do the reassembly of the Gen 6. So first things first, to reassemble, and this is another tricky part on this EDP, is we're going to slide this part in and kind of get it situated. And it kind of has a little slot in there that it lives. Okay, and so it lives in there and it kind of holds itself. And what you're going to notice real quickly is that EDP rod that they have sticks out a lot. And it's going to interfere with the installation of the extractor and the safety plunger. So I have to go back to that hole and punch it again to drive it back. Okay, so I'm going to drive it back. There we go. Okay, so I have it now. What's interesting is, again, it's stuck here, right? Okay, what you're going to notice a couple things. If you look in there, you're going to see just a slight piece of the extractor depressor plunger rod sticking out, so I can lever that back a little bit. And I'm going to use that when I go to install. First, we're going to go ahead and install the safety plunger. And the safety plunger has a square or flat edge to it that goes against the wall of the slide. So we're going to put it in that way. And I'm going to drop it in there and get it fully seated. Now, when I say fully seated, I actually want to be able to get some spring pressure out of it. I want to get it in there and be able to have it spring up and down. Okay, I hope you can see that. And so once I do that, then I'm going to go ahead and press it in and keep it in. Come on now. There we go. Keep it in, and I'm going to take my extractor, and there's a barrel that goes in like so, and the claw goes into the slide itself. And I'm going to stick it in there like that. If I have any resistance, I could lever that back a little bit just to make sure it's seated. It looks like it's good. And now, before I go too much further, I'm going to show you again that spring pressure we're looking for. Looks like it's good. And that's what happens every time you shoot. Boom, 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 boom. It grabs hold of that case and pulls it out. But it has to have that spring pressure. And I always recommend that you test it, a little bit before you actually go through the full process and, have that thing fly away on you. Okay, so that was it. And then the punch is really important. And you'll see that, like I said, that little technique of just pulling it back a little bit as you're putting the extractor in there really seems to work. Okay, now the rest of it is pretty simple. Here's the actual firing pin assembly. And I've done this before on many videos, but it's very important that, you understand that it's really difficult to manage this unless you are able to manage that spacer sleeve. And that's why I use the back side of the slide, just like so. And I pull this down. Here's what happens. You pull it down, and here come your spring cups. And there's actually two. They're called cups for a reason. There's one little side, and here's the other side. Now, we sell these as well because people lose them all the time. They're just tiny, and they go flying away if you're not careful. And here's the actual striker spring, and here's the actual striker, and here's the actual spacer sleeve. And that is basically the full assembly of the firing pin. It's firing pin assembly. All right, now to put it back together, it's basically the same exact thing. We're going to take our spacer sleeve and put the striker back in, like so. Okay, and now we have to use this again because we want to be able to manage that spacer sleeve without pushing it up. We take our spring, we put our spring basically on top, and then here's the tricky part. You take your little spring cups, and you have to kind of get them loaded up and have them ready, because what we're going to do is we're going to compress the spring down, okay, past the neck. We're going to put one of these guys on one side. And here comes the other one. Just like that. You can look at it, looks good. So again, those two cups come together. They live under the neck of the firing pin, and they hold that spring in place. Pretty amazing, pretty simple. Again, plastic pieces that the gun won't work without them, but we sell a lot of spring cups. And then now, once it's assembled, it just goes straight into the firing pin channel. Let's see if we get that, make sure it's all good. Okay. Now inside of the slide, by the way, there is a channel liner. It lives there. And it doesn't really come out unless you or to Cerakote your slide or put it in any kind of heat, because it will melt. But we do have a tool to remove that as well. And again, it's a part that you don't really play with or mess with. Never really put any oil in that firing pin spring as well. You want to run that dry because it will gunk up if not. So. All right, now the slide cover plate, and here's the technique for that. So basically anchor our slide, get this kind of started in a sense, right? Okay, kind of get it ready, get my thumb on top of it. I'll take one of my larger punches and push down on that spacer sleeve, the spring-loaded spacer sleeve. And as I push it down, I want to push my slide cover plate up. And this one doesn't go up quite as easy as the other one because it has a little step to it. But once you get it, you get it. There we go, just like that. Okay, and the barrel goes in, easy. Boom, and your guide rod. And now a lot of people call us and say, hey, my guide rod is out of the proper place there when I take it apart. And that's very common, okay? Don't think that there's something wrong. Sometimes it jumps off there in the disassembly process. So there's really nothing wrong with the guide rod. It happens with the plastic ones, happens with the tungsten ones. It's just the way it is. Now here's another thing that happens a lot. People go to put their slide on and it gets stuck right there and they think something's wrong. Intuitively, you think, well, you know, what? Hey, is something wrong? What's going on? What you do is you press down on the back. Okay, just give it a little pressure back there. And that clears it, and there it goes. Boom. And that is the disassembly, reassembly, kind of the overall deep dive into the new Gen 6. A couple of the things I want to mention real quick. It does accept all magazines. That's one thing Glock has always done and is very smart. It'll accept any magazine with an extension. This is a 17 magazine, so here it is. So the extensions work fine, okay, boom. It'll take any magazine. This is a Gen 5 magazine. Here is a Gen 1 magazine, no metal liner, okay? It goes in, it fits. It doesn't drop out as well. Well, that one actually did this time. So there you go. Yeah, so this is one of the things, like I said, Glock has always done is the magazines from Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now 6 are all interchangeable. I can take a Gen 6 magazine, Gen 5 magazine, put it into a Gen 1, or a Gen 1 magazine, put it into a Gen 5, and it's going to fit and function. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with the Gen 6, and I think you will be too. We're just starting to get them, and they are starting to flow through the distribution channels. I'm letting them go. This, of course, is the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop here in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, if you're ever in Nashville, you got to come to the store. We've got all kinds of cool stuff for your Glock. We've got a very amazing shoot room. You know, they're not lanes, okay? We have these shoot rooms that allow you to shoot at multiple targets in multiple directions and move and draw from holsters and do all kinds of things you can't do in traditional ranges. So people come here to train and to become better shooters, to become more competent, and to learn how to shoot and to improve their skills. And we invite you to come down and check it out. And if I'm here, ask for me. I'll come out and take a picture with you and say hello and all that other good stuff. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.